I've walked the trails of Mosm Beque Park as a ranger for over 6 years, but never have I felt the ground beneath my boots thrum with such foreboding as I did that particular morning. The park, usually a sanctuary of natural order and calm, seemed to whisper secrets through the leaves that day. My role here, primarily ensuring the safety of the wildlife and overseeing the security measures, was about to take a turn into the unknown. As I patrolled the western sector of the park, the air shifted suddenly. A chilling breeze swept through the savanna, carrying with it an unnerving silence. The usual calls of birds were absent, and even the insects seemed to hold their breath. It was in this eerie stillness that I first saw it, a crack in the very fabric of the sky, like a jagged line torn across a canvas of clouds. From this fissure emerged a creature, so bizarre and unlike anything terrestrial. This being, seemingly pulled from the nightmares of a cosmic horror, was draped in shadows despite the morning light. It moved with an unsettling fluidity, each motion deliberate yet unnatural. As I stood frozen, a mixture of fear and fascination took hold of me. The creature's presence was an enigma that my mind struggled to comprehend, let alone accept as reality. I recall the overwhelming urge to flee, to deny the existence of what stood before me. Yet, as a guardian of this land, my duty anchored me in place. The creature seemed unaware, or perhaps uninterested in my presence, its focus instead on the surrounding flora. The plants around it appeared to respond, their colors deepening, an unnatural pulse seeming to flow through them. Compelled by a sense of responsibility, I reached for my radio, intent on calling for backup. My fingers, however, fumbled with the device, a tangible representation of the internal conflict that seized me. How does one report the unreportable? The words, "I've spotted an alien entity," seemed too fantastical to utter. Instead, I found myself trekking back to the ranger station, my mind racing with every step. The logical part of me churned through rational explanations, hallucinations perhaps, or some trick of the light. But the dread that had sunk its claws into me couldn't be as easily dismissed. Upon reaching the station, I shared my encounter hesitantly with Quaim, the volunteer who had become as familiar with these lands as any seasoned ranger. His eyes widened with every word, reflecting my own turmoil. Quaim suggested we consult Dottie, another ranger who had recently reported strange findings near the southern ridge. Rhinos standing as if frozen in time, life seemingly paused within them. We decided to investigate together, hoping for strength in numbers. As we prepared, I couldn't shake the image of the creature and the silent warning that nature itself seemed to broadcast. Something primal in me understood that the park I loved was no longer just home to the creatures of the earth, but had become a threshold to the unknown. This was only the beginning, I feared, a beginning that could herald an end, not just for the uncharted tranquility of Mosm Beque, but for all that we deemed familiar and safe in our isolated corner of East Africa. The following day dawned clear and mercilessly bright, as if the land itself sought to erase the shadows of yesterday's horrors. Yet the stark light seemed only to deepen the darkness lurking within the heart of Mosm Beque. Accompanied by Quaim and Dottie, I headed towards the southern ridge, where Dottie had stumbled upon the unsettling scene of lifeless rhinos. As we approached the site, the air grew thick, almost palpable with an unnatural stillness. There, spread before us in the clearing, were the rhinos Dottie had described. They stood motionless, not a single breath to be seen fogging the morning air, their bodies unnervingly intact yet wholly drained of life. The scene was macabre, a grotesque tableau that defied all natural law. Quaim circled the creatures warily, his usual stoic demeanor replaced by a furrowed brow and tight lips. "This isn't just predation. This is something else," he muttered, echoing my fears. It was clear that whatever we were dealing with, it was neither a simple animal attack nor a disease we could diagnose. Dottie, pale and shaken from his earlier encounter, recounted his experience. "They were like this when I found them, not a mark on them. But it was as if something had sucked the life right out of them." His voice trembled, and he refused to meet our eyes, staring instead at the ground beneath his feet. The decision to report our findings to the higher authorities weighed heavily on me. Yet, I knew we needed more expertise, possibly even military intervention, to handle what was quickly spiraling beyond our control. I radioed in our location and the situation, my voice steady despite the churn of my stomach. While waiting for guidance, we decided to search the surrounding area for more clues. It wasn't long before we discovered another chilling sight. Birds, mid-flight, frozen like the rhinos, suspended in a macabre still life. This confirmed the pervasive and expanding nature of the threat. The gravity of the situation sank in as we stood among the eerie stillness. "We're not equipped for this," Quaim said, his voice low, almost lost amidst the whispering grass. "This isn't natural. We're dealing with something that doesn't belong to our world." The return journey to the station was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts, the weight of our discovery bearing down on us. The park, once a place of refuge and beauty, now felt like a landscape haunted by the unknown. The chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves, which once sounded like music, now seemed like whispers of warning. Upon our arrival, the station was abuzz with the arrival of military vehicles stirring up dust and noise, an intrusion into the normally serene park atmosphere. A man, who introduced himself as Kibu, stepped forward. His face was marked by a scar that ran from his brow to his jaw, a stark testament to battles past. He listened intently as we shared our findings, his eyes sharp and assessing. Kibu's presence brought a semblance of reassurance, but his next words chilled me to the bone. "You're right to call us. What you've encountered is part of something much bigger. These aren't isolated incidents. They're the beginnings of an invasion." His statement hung in the air, heavy and foreboding, as the realization settled in. We were at war, not with a nation or a rebel faction, but with an enemy as alien as the creature I had encountered by the rift. The arrival of Kibu and his team marked a new chapter in the unfolding crisis at Mosm Beque. As a ranger, I had always felt a certain pride in handling the challenges that the park presented, relying on my knowledge of the land and its creatures. But this was beyond any human threat or natural disaster I'd ever encountered. Kibu wasted no time setting up a command center at our main ranger station. His soldiers, equipped with gear that seemed alien in the rugged bush of East Africa, moved with precision and authority. Watching them, I felt a strange mix of relief and trepidation. Here were the reinforcements we desperately needed, yet their presence confirmed the gravity of our situation. "We've been tracking incidents like this for a while," Kibu explained as we pored over satellite images and reports on a makeshift table littered with maps and digital devices. "What you described fits the pattern of what we call the seed, an entity capable of altering its surroundings, draining life to fuel its growth." The term "the seed" struck a chord in me. It was an apt name for something that took root so insidiously, sprouting terror. Kibu's description of it growing, spreading its influence like invasive weeds, was unsettlingly accurate based on what I had witnessed. Our strategy session was intense. Kibu proposed a series of reconnaissance missions to gauge the extent of the invasion. "We need to understand how fast it's spreading and find its source," he said, his eyes scanning the room, meeting each of our gazes. Time is not on our side. I volunteered to lead one of the teams. Despite my fears, or perhaps because of them, I felt a compelling need to face this threat head-on, to protect the park and the lives entwined with it. Quaim and several of Kibu's soldiers joined my team, a blend of park wisdom and military discipline. Before we departed, Kibu pulled me aside. "Keep your team tight and your eyes open. We don't just need to find this thing. We need to find a way to stop it. Remember, it's unlike anything we've prepared for." His advice, though grim, was a necessary anchor in the sea of unknowns we were about to navigate. The reconnaissance missions took us deeper into the park than I usually ventured. As we moved through the thick brush and under the towering trees, the signs of corruption were everywhere. The flora seemed overtaken by an eerie stillness, and the fauna was conspicuously absent. It was as though the very soul of the park was being suffocated. During one evening, as we camped under the stars, the reality of our situation settled around us like the cool night air. The soldiers shared stories of their previous encounters with unusual threats, but none matched the scale or strangeness of what we faced. Their camaraderie, forged in the fires of shared danger, was a small comfort against the backdrop of our fears. As we prepared to return with our findings, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me like the dust on my boots. The park had changed. It no longer felt like the home I knew. It was now a battleground, hosting a war between our world and one that threatened to overwhelm us with shadows and silence. We were not just fighting for control, we were fighting for survival, against an enemy that knew no boundaries and respected no laws of nature. The reconnaissance missions provided us with a clearer, yet more disturbing picture of the invasion. The park was transforming. Areas once lush and vibrant now stood as ghostly echoes of themselves, touched by the cold hand of the seed's influence. This alien flora was not just spreading. It was establishing dominance, creating a bastion for whatever came through that crack in space. As we gathered around the newly updated maps in the command center, the scale of the spread stunned us all. Lines and circles marked the most heavily affected areas, revealing a pattern that seemed almost strategic. "It's cultivating the land," one of the analysts remarked grimly, "preparing it for something we can't yet fully comprehend." Our next discovery was even more harrowing. During a patrol, we encountered the crimson arthropods that Kidwu had warned might follow the seed's growth. They were unlike any terrestrial insects. Their carapaces gleamed with a metallic sheen, and their movements were unnervingly coordinated. As they swarmed a fallen buffalo, their efficiency was chilling, stripping it to bones in minutes. The introduction of these predators changed the urgency of our mission. We were no longer just observers and defenders. We had to become aggressors. "We need to cut off the spread at its roots," Kidwu decided, his voice hardened with resolve. The command was clear. We were to locate the heart of this infection and destroy it. Preparations for a major offensive began immediately. The military brought in more troops and equipment, while the Rangers offered their expertise on navigating the increasingly alien landscape. I found myself in the middle, a bridge between two worlds, each with its own strengths and weaknesses in the face of this unprecedented threat. Night meetings became our routine as we planned under the cover of darkness, the only time the park seemed to rest from its unnatural growth. Maps, satellite images, and first-hand reports formed the basis of our strategy. We weren't just planning a battle, we were planning to reclaim our world. The relationship between the Rangers and the military, initially strained by different approaches to crisis management, began to solidify. Respect grew from shared experiences and the mutual recognition of the stakes. Quaim, in particular, proved invaluable, his deep knowledge of the park's subtler signs helping to predict the seed's next moves. One night, as we sat around a small fire, far from the main camp to avoid drawing attention, the conversation turned to what might lie ahead. "What are we really fighting?" One soldier asked, staring into the flames. "Is it just survival, or is there something more at stake here?" It was a question none of us could answer fully, but it hung in the air like the smoke from our fire, lingering and insistent. As the day of the assault approached, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This was more than just a mission. It was a stand against an encroaching darkness that sought to unmake the world we knew. The park, my home, had become ground zero in a battle for the soul of our planet. We stood at the edge, looking into the heart of the corrupted land, knowing that the coming days would test us in ways we had never imagined. The seed's growth was a blight we could no longer ignore, and the crimson arthropods were but harbingers of the deeper horror that awaited. Our resolve was firm. But as the sun set, casting long shadows over the land, I couldn't help but wonder if it would be enough. The day of the assault broke with a tense dawn, the sky painted in stark, vivid strokes of red and orange, as if the heavens themselves mirrored the battle to come. We assembled at the edge of the affected zone. The area around the hollow baobab tree that satellite images and scout reports had identified as the epicenter of the seed's invasion. As the commander of the operation, Kibu briefed us one last time, his voice resolute over the hum of equipment and the murmur of troops preparing for combat. "This is not just a mission, it's a necessity," he declared, surveying the assembled faces, men and women ready to confront the unknown. "We end this threat today, or it ends us." Our approach to the baobab was slow and methodical. The land around us had taken on an alien aspect, the vegetation twisted into grotesque parodies of their natural forms, pulsating slightly as if breathing. The air was thick with a palpable sense of dread that clung to our skins, making each step feel like wading through resistance. As we neared the tree, the ground itself seemed to pulse underfoot, a soft, rhythmic throb that matched the beating of our own hearts. The silence was oppressive, the usual sounds of wildlife completely absent, replaced by the soft, eerie whispers of the altered flora. Every sense was heightened, every shadow cast by the twisted branches overhead seemed to move. Suddenly, the ground erupted in several places around us, and we were swarmed by the crimson arthropods. They were larger than any we had encountered before, their bodies armored and glistening. The air filled with the sounds of gunfire and shouts as my team fought back, the military training of Kidwa's soldiers providing a disciplined response to the chaos. The battle was fierce and frantic, each of us caught in our own struggle for survival, yet acutely aware of the larger fight. I found myself back to back with Quaim, who wielded his machete with deadly precision, cutting through the arthropods that came too close. "Stay focused," he yelled over the din, his voice a lifeline amid the pandemonium. We pushed forward, inch by agonizing inch, until the baobab tree loomed directly ahead, its massive trunk split by the same eerie crack from which the creature had first appeared. The air around it shimmered with a strange energy, the atmosphere thick with power and menace. Kibwe signaled to the explosives team, and they moved in, setting charges around the tree's base. The plan was clear: destroy the seed's heart, hoping it would halt the spread and incapacitate the creature. As they worked, I felt a vibration through the soles of my boots, an ominous sign that we were running out of time. The charges were set, and we retreated to a safe distance. Kibu gave the order, and the night was split by a tremendous explosion. The ground shook, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Then the baobab collapsed into itself, a great cloud of dust rising into the air. As the dust settled, silence fell over the park once more. The crack had closed, the air cleared, and the vegetation seemed to relax its unnatural tension. We waited, breaths held, for any sign that our actions had been in vain. But as the minutes stretched into hours, and no new threats emerged, relief began to wash over us, mingled with the exhaustion of battle and the sorrow for those we had lost. This victory was hard-won, the landscape around us bearing the scars of battle, but for the first time since this nightmare began, there was hope. We had struck a decisive blow against an enemy unlike any other, and while the future remained uncertain, we knew we had survived the day. The fight to reclaim Mosm Beque was far from over, but we had learned much, and we would be ready for whatever came next. The morning after the battle dawned serene and bright, a stark contrast to the darkness of the preceding days. As I walked through the park, the air felt cleaner, almost washed anew by our efforts. The twisted vegetation was gradually returning to its natural state, and the oppressive silence had lifted, replaced by the tentative chirps of returning birds. It seemed the immediate threat had been neutralized, but the echoes of the conflict lingered in the scared earth and in our weary hearts. As we assessed the damage and planned our recovery efforts, I couldn't help but reflect on the enormity of what we had faced. The park was no longer just a sanctuary for wildlife. It had become a battleground for Earth's sovereignty against extraterrestrial forces. The victory, while significant, felt like a brief pause in a war that was far from over. Kibble organized debriefing sessions, where we gathered to share our experiences and learn from them. "We've won a battle, but not the war," he reminded us solemnly. His words were a stark reminder that our victory, though pivotal, was perhaps just the first of many challenges we might face. During these meetings, we discussed not only the tactical successes and failures, but also the psychological and emotional toll it had taken on all of us. It was clear that the scars were not just physical. The fear and tension of facing such an unknown enemy had changed us all. The need for psychological support was emphasized, and plans were made to bring counselors to the park to help our team cope. Quaim emerged as a key figure during these discussions, his insights into the park's ecology and his bravery in the face of such dangers earning him a newfound respect among the military personnel. His leadership qualities came to the forefront, and there was talk of him taking on a more significant role in the ongoing management and defense of the park. I spent long hours with Quaim, walking the recovering trails, discussing our strategies for future threats. "We need to be better prepared," he insisted, "not just with weapons, but with knowledge." His words resonated with me, and together we planned to incorporate more of the local indigenous knowledge into our training programs, blending modern science with traditional wisdom. The physical cleanup of the park was arduous. The remnants of the battle, burnt vegetation, disrupted soil, and the carcasses of the crimson arthropods needed to be cleared. But there was also a need to restore the natural balance, to ensure that the alien influence was truly eradicated. This task fell to our team of ecologists, who worked meticulously to assess the impact on the flora and fauna. One evening, as the sun set over a particularly hard day of recovery work, I found myself at the site of the fallen baobab. The tree, once a majestic landmark, now lay in ruins, a reminder of the fierce battle and the sacrifices made. Standing there, I felt a deep connection to the park, stronger even than before the invasion. It was as if the land acknowledged our efforts to defend it, offering silent gratitude and a promise to heal. As the days passed, the park began to show signs of true recovery. Animals that had fled or hidden during the invasion slowly returned, and the vegetation regained its lush, vibrant colors. It was a testament to the resilience of nature and the dedication of those who fought to protect it. Reflecting on these developments, I documented everything in my journal. This record, I hoped, would serve as a guide for future generations, a testament to what we had endured and overcome. The battle against the seed was over, but the lessons it taught us about vigilance, resilience, and the interconnectedness of all life on Earth would resonate forever in the annals of Mosm Beque. As weeks turned into months, the life at Mosm Beque began to normalize, but the echoes of our recent past lingered in the rejuvenated air and in the minds of those who walked its paths. The park had endured, and so had we, emerging scared but with a newfound resilience. It became apparent that our battle against the seed was not just a victory, but a profound lesson in unity and vigilance. In the aftermath, we intensify our efforts to monitor the park for any signs of residual alien influence or new threats. Advanced surveillance technologies were installed at key points throughout the area, blending seamlessly with the natural environment. These tools were not just meant to watch but to understand, providing us with real-time data on the health of the ecosystem. Collaboration with international experts in xenobiology and extraterrestrial ecosystems became routine. Their insights helped us to prepare for the possibility that what happened might not be an isolated incident. Workshops and training sessions were held regularly, turning the ranger team into skilled observers of both natural and unnatural phenomena. Quaim, now the head ranger, was instrumental in integrating local indigenous knowledge into our monitoring practices. He organized meetings with community elders who shared ancient wisdom about the land and its more mysterious qualities. These sessions often ended with the realization that many of the phenomena we considered alien were not entirely unknown to the local lore. The cultural integration went beyond just knowledge sharing. It became a cornerstone of our conservation efforts. We started community programs that empowered locals, involving them directly in the park's management and protection. This not only strengthened our defenses, but also revived local traditions, fostering a deep communal respect for the land. The recovery process also involved revisiting our environmental and conservation strategies. The invasive species that had accompanied the seed had been eradicated, but they left behind lessons on the importance of maintaining ecological balance. Our new policies focused on proactive measures, aiming to prevent such disruptions before they could start. One day, standing by the new visitor center, which housed exhibits about the park's flora, fauna, and recent extraterrestrial encounters, I felt a surge of pride. The center was not just a place of learning, but a symbol of our journey from the brink of calamity to a beacon of hope and resilience. Each exhibit told a story of loss, of battle, of recovery, and of understanding. School groups, tourists, and scientists alike walked through, their expressions a mix of curiosity and awe. The park had become more than a national treasure. It was a testament to the power of collective human spirit. In my quiet moments, often while watching the sunset paint the savannah in shades of gold and fire, I pondered the lessons of those dark days. We had looked into the abyss, fought what lay beyond, and returned. We were guardians not just of a park, but of a planet. The responsibility was immense, but so was our dedication. As I penned down these reflections in my journal, the final entry for this chapter of my life, I knew that the story of Mosm Beque was far from over. It was a continuing saga of respect for our world and vigilance against those forces that would see it harmed. Our legacy would be one of courage, of unity, and of an unending commitment to safeguarding not just the park, but the delicate balance of life itself. This legacy, forged in the fires of adversity, would guide future generations to watch the stars not just with wonder, but with wisdom.